Welcome to the Retro Blood.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Retro Blood as we finish up our 1980s Vampire Month here in February 2024. Up next, if y'all like suave, fruit-eating vampires.
Named Jerry.
Very creative over there. If y'all like a kid whose name is Charlie, who would rather stare on his neighbor than have sex with his girlfriend. If y'all like a guy named Billy, who's like a mutant monster, familiar gatekeeper guy. If y'all like some guy named Ed, who's like some annoying punker guy who turns into a vampire, then this is the film for you, brother, because the Retro Blood is talking all about Fright Night, the original Fright Night, by the way, too, 1985. Jay Allison, James Carr, what's happening, Allison? We are finishing up Vampire Month. I think this has been a really fun month so far. How you been liking it?
It has, and it's been great, man. And we're, in my opinion, we're saving the best for the last. Although Dance of the Damned,
oh yeah,
that was a hell of a movie. But yeah, this movie is a classic. So yeah. I've wanted to do this movie since the show started, and I'm really surprised you'd never seen this movie.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I've heard about this movie before. You know, the name always comes up to mind, like Fright Night and everything. And I didn't realize, there was a couple of things I didn't realize when we picked this one for the end review for our Vampire Month. First of all, I didn't realize it had a sequel, and the sequel was in the 80s. So I was like, oh, shit. Because usually, you know, if the movie has like a sequel and stuff, I like to do them like kind of closer to each other. But it just, you know, because we were coming down to the wire, we had this movie picked out and another movie picked out. So we just kind of picked Fright Night, you know, to kind of like round out the month. We think it would be a really good classic one, but I just didn't realize it had like a sequel after that. And I honestly didn't realize there's like a lot of history when it comes to this film as well too. Not only did it get a sequel in the 80s, but it also got a remake, all right, in the 2000s, and then it got another remake within the 2000s.
Really?
Yeah. So it got like, because there's
a remade twice?
Yes. So there's a Fright...
I did not know that.
Yeah, so there's a Fright Night that came out, I'm not sure the exact date, but it came out in the 2000s. And then there was a Fright Night 2, which was called Fright Night 2. But the story was basically just retold from the first movie. Right? So it's not like it's even a sequel to like the remake that happened. So, but you know, that's how they do it. But yeah, like, and then they're talking about maybe doing some, then there's a comic book series for this film as well too. And there's a book series too, talk about the origins of Fright Night too. So, and this one is kind of interesting. So this one, like, you know, we've seen when we've done these different vampire movies for this whole month, kind of like the different styles of vampires that we'd be getting. You know, we started off with the Vampire Hunter D, and we count Magnus's boredom throughout the years, and that's kind of like his main driving force. We talk about the hunger, and we talk about, you know, just the Countess Miriam in that one, her love for trying to find, you know, her connection throughout years, even though all of her lovers would die and come back like zombie men in her little whole place. And then we had the Dance of the Damned guy who just wanted to sunbathe in the sun. You know what I mean? And then this one was like, I think this one was more of the classic vampire. The only thing that kind of like threw me off that I thought was kind of interesting was his fruit eating.
Well, yeah, like bats eat fruit.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I thought that was pretty neat. Like, you know, because, you know, I know. I thought that was actually pretty neat because I don't think I've seen that before. Because usually when we have vampire characters, you know, they can't eat anything, or they can only drink blood. That's it. You know what I mean? Like anything else would make them sick. They would throw up and shit. But this one's like, you know, that makes sense. He's a fruit-eating bat. Okay, there you go. So I thought that part was pretty cool. And I liked it how this guy, this vampire Jerry, of all names, I liked his, he was very, I thought he's very good at seducing the lady folk.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's played by Chris Sarandon.
Yes.
I mean, like, you know, Like you can be like a totally like, you know, heterosexual male and know that guy's hot. Like,
yeah, there you go, brother.
He was, and also Chris Sarandon was actually, strangely enough, was married to Susan Sarandon, who was in The Hunger a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, there you go. See, they all
not
tie.
at this time. They were married like in the 70s.
And I was surprised that he actually was the voice of Jack Skellington.
Yes, he was the voice of Jack Skellington.
I was like, okay.
I think he was the speaking voice. I don't think he did the singing.
Yeah, he was the speaking voice, yes.
Yeah.
So, but we'll talk about more of that when we come to Who Booked This Shit. But yeah, this one was pretty interesting. Yeah. Like, I can't wait to like kind of dive into like the plot and the lore of this the vampire film. So
one thing I did want to mention is like this movie kind of is, I don't know if you're familiar with this term. Are you familiar with the term deconstruction of a genre or anything like that? I'm not sure if I'm explaining myself right.
Like,
but basically it's like, okay, so basically like I came to know that term from like deconstruction of superheroes in comic books. So like, for example, like Watchmen, like you're familiar with Watchmen, right?
Yeah.
The comic book series in the movie. So basically that's what they call a deconstruction of superheroes, which means that, or the way I take it to mean, or the way I use that term is like, what would these characters be like if they lived in a real world? So like Superman, for example, it's hard to imagine reading a Superman comic book or watching a Superman movie. It's hard to imagine that in the world that you live in. Like it's like a completely separate, like, you know, reality almost. But in Dracula, to me, is the same way. Like that's hard to imagine that in a real world. But, you know, Watchmen is like, what would superheroes be like if they were real people? And to me, this is kind of what this is like. It's like a deconstruction of vampires. It's like, what would a vampire be like if he was a real person?
Yeah.
And I kind of think that that's what Dance of the Damned tried to do, just didn't do it very well. But I think this movie does that really well because Jerry, I mean, first of all, he doesn't have some like weird, like Eastern European vampire name like Brahms or something like that.
Yeah.
Like he's like, his name, he's Jerry, you know, he was Jerry Dandridge, and then Jerry Dandridge became a vampire, and now he's just living as a vampire and eating fruit and, you know, killing hookers. But yeah, so it's like, to me, this movie's, I like it, especially because it's kind of like what a vampire in a real world would be like. He doesn't do anything weird, or he does supernatural vampire stuff, but it's like, you just feel like he's a real person, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah. And I liked it too, you know, when we get into the Peter Vincent character, where he was just like an actor on the television program, but he actually turned into a vampire killer at the end, brother. All right.
I have a lot to say about that, but we'll get there. So let's do our history segment first.
Let's do the history segment. So this movie came out in one of our favorite years. Me and Allison always talk about. I think me and you both agreed before we got on here that 1984 and 1985 is one of our favorite years for wrestling and horror movies.
Absolutely.
And metal too, to a degree.
And metal too, yeah.
I mean, there's just a lot going on. You know what I mean? And you can see like the kind of the switch. You know, like I think when people think about the height of the 80s, they kind of think about like this 2 years right here. You know, particularly 84 and 85. So there's a couple of things we got going on. So this movie came out August 2nd, 1985, brother. So we got a summertime release over here in the deep hot month of August. So, you know, this is actually a couple months after WrestleMania. So, you know, WrestleMania 1 happened in March, all right, of 1985. And, you know, the WWF was hot, you know, coming off that big WrestleMania. It's kind of weird to see, you know, wrestling in this area because, you know, nowadays we would have like a pay-per-view pretty much every month. But, you know, back in the day, brother, they only had like maybe one big event televised or something, like one event a year. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, because, I mean, until WrestleMania, I don't know if it was absolutely the first, but WrestleMania was like the wrestling pay-per-view, right?
Yeah.
Like that was one of the first times you could watch wrestling on pay-per-view.
Yeah.
Or had to watch wrestling on pay-per-view.
And still like closed circuit as well was mainly what most wrestling did with their big shows. Like I know Starrcade was a closed circuit. But you know, so speaking of that, we have the opposite promotion at this time that we're going to be talking about, which is Mid-Atlantic, which is Jim Crockett Promotions. All right. And I didn't realize this until so there's an episode y'all can find on Peacock. So if you go to the Cock Brother, all right, if you want to follow along or watch this episode, it's going to be the August 3rd, 1985 episode of Mid-Atlantic. That's the one we're doing. But I don't know what I did at first. I was watching like the wrong episode, okay? And then I realized, like, wait a minute, this shit didn't come out in April. That's the one I was watching was in April. But there was like this cool little graphic, which I didn't realize at the time. That's why I'm bringing it up, where 1985 was the 50th anniversary of Mid-Atlantic, which is crazy to think about because they started this promotion in 1935.
Yeah, I mean, like Crockett Senior, or what? I mean, like not even Senior, like Senior's dad, I guess, started Mid-Atlantic originally. So that's crazy to think that the kind of history that they had.
Yeah, it's like 50 years.
This is also about the time that I first got into wrestling. Like I can remember seeing wrestling with my grandfather on Sunday mornings, a little bit before this. But I can remember like coming home, from church and wrestling being on. I can remember like Marty Robbins, the country singer, had a TV show. And then after that, wrestling came on. And this was going to be about the time that I would start getting into wrestling really heavy. So this would, to me, like brought back a lot of memories.
Yeah.
About the show.
And this is a fun show. Like this one right here was their Mid-Atlantic show. And like this show was mainly, you know, I would say squash matches, but you did get some pretty good main, you know, two main stars going at it as well too. Kind of like how they did their Saturday show where it was just in that little sound studio, which is weird because like so on the Peacock, when you look up WCW Saturday Night, it doesn't start until like November of 1985. Okay. Right. But then before that, you got to go to the Mid-Atlantic television show that they did, which they would pretty much, you know, around this time, how they film TV is they would have a couple tours and they would just film certain matches on those tours and just use it for their TV. Yeah. But when we were watching this episode, it was weird because they cut in to the sound studio. So I was thinking like, okay, were they doing? Was there like two different shows or one? You know, I
don't know. Yeah. So that's something that I cannot actually figure out. Yeah. And if I ever went to one of these wrestling conventions and met somebody like Jim Cornette or somebody from that era to explain to me what show went where, because he, like somebody like that would know. Yeah. But like when I was growing up, I did not have cable. Like I know that for a fact, cable wasn't available to us. We'd never ever had it. We only had an antenna and we had the 3 channels that everybody else had. But I was able to watch wrestling. But from every wrestling historian that I can talk to, and by historian, I mean people who know a lot about wrestling, there was the show, the Crockett show was on TBS at 6:05. But I would not have been able to watch that. So there was some show that was on weekends, on Saturday and Sunday, that had wrestling, and it was similar to this show. It looked exactly like this show. It had the same credits and everything, but had matches just like this. It had squash matches, and then they had the promos where you followed the story, which is really what you got to kind of do when you watch these shows, because you're not going to get big, high-profile matches on the TV, because that was all for you had to buy a ticket to see that. Yeah. Back then. It was all about putting butts in seats, as Tony Schiavone says. Yeah. But there was some show that was like this that I could watch. It was an hour long. So I'm guessing that I watched the Mid-Atlantic show, but I could never see the Saturday night show because, you know, it was on cable. Yeah. So it's just very interesting like that. I liked how they like cut in to that format too. But let's talk a little bit about this show. So we start off you talk about a dingy arena, brother. I'm talking about a ring, a crowd, and one big ass spotlight. That's the TV studio. No. Even the
the arena that they were in.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yes. Oh, that's what you were asking about before I interrupted you. So, yeah. So, like, apparently, I noticed this too. So, and usually they don't do this on the Mid-Atlantic show, but like you're right. They would go and tape a show, like say in Spartanburg at the Memorial Auditorium, and they would cut some of those matches into their weekly show.
Yeah.
But they would also do a match in matches in the studio. And if you see, like, when you see the camera zoom out, like where they're doing those interviews is right beside where the ring is.
Yeah, right there.
You can see that when you can see that when the Rock and Roll Express are talking later on, because Ricky Morton says, "Okay, there's a match going in the ring right now," because you can hear them like banging around, which I think is him saying, "Okay, we got to hurry this up." But yeah, so they would cut in some of those matches and then kind of do interviews in the studio is what it looked like to me. Like, I thought that was weird too. Like, I think you noticed the same thing I did. It looked kind of weird.
Yeah.
Like the crowd in the studio couldn't have seen that match, but they were talking about it on camera.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but yeah,
it's just interesting. But so this match, this kind of starts off. We got the Russian trio squad over here.
Russians, yeah.
All right. I always like the Russians, man. I like that, especially that Nikita Koloff, the Russian sickle. I thought he was fucking great, brother. And he was on this show twice. I was talking about it now. Like, they're in like this 6-man. They beat these jobbers' asses. And then he comes back.
Yeah.
He beats this other jobber's ass. All using the Russian sickle. And then we had Rick Flair and everything talk about Nikita Koloff. So it sounds like they were trying to, build up a match between these two. Which I bet was fantastic every time they got in the ring. So we also had a promo with the big cowboy. He's looking for Nature Boy, Buddy Rogers. He's looking for his ass. And this one I thought was really interesting. Was we cut back to the studio, and it's Jim Cornette doing a promo introducing his brand new tag team, the Midnight Express.
Yes, I was going to bring that up because I forgot to mention that earlier. So one thing about 1985 that's special is that was the time when they first introduced everything that I know about Crockett wrestling. Yeah. Other than Ric Flair and Dusty, although I don't think Dusty had been there very long at this point. But everything that I knew that to me is Crockett wrestling came in 1985. So you got I think the Russians had been there a little bit, but you got Midnight Express, and then Ole and Arn Anderson would show up. So you got to consider the Horsemen are brand new too. The Horsemen had just formed.
Well, no. I don't think the Horsemen's there yet because Ric Flair was a babyface on the show. Like the Horsemen,
point. They may not have formed the Horsemen yet. You're right. I'd have to look up that when they formed, but you're right. I don't think that had happened yet.
They're all there. They're all there, right? Mm-hmm. But they're not like at this particular time. They're not together.
Okay. All right. You're right. That hasn't happened yet. The Road Warriors aren't there yet either. But the Midnight Express just showed up as a brand new tag team. They came from, I believe, Mid-South, if I'm not wrong. And then you would also have Ole and Arn Anderson, who hadn't been there very long. But yeah, this was really cool to see Midnight Express in one of their first Crockett matches. Yeah,
apparently this is like the second televised match that they had, and I liked how they named their names. Listen, guys, we got Lover Boy Dennis Condrey over here. We got Beautiful Bobby Eaton coming out there. Yep. Good old squash match, and I thought Bobby, he has a really nice like high knee that he hits. And then there was like a high knee and a clothesline. I was like, damn. Like these guys are fantastic. I mean, I was about to say that must have been like seeing that for the first time. Yeah. Must have been like just inspirational for people. Like, you had the Rock and Roll Express who were feuding against the Russians. But now, like, I could see this being like. So to me, this would have been exactly like seeing FTR show up in AEW. And then saying, okay, this team is going to have some great matches with the Young Bucks. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, you got the Midnight Express and the Rock and Roll Express going together. And, you can just tell that these guys are going to have some great matches in the next year or two. Yeah. Because they were also, Midnight was said down their promo, too, that they were listing all the tag teams that they're going to be fighting. And I liked when they do that. I like when they list the challengers that they all have, because it makes your promotion seem like it's jam packed with great talent.
Yeah.
I think they should do that nowadays, especially AEW. So, speaking of another fantastic tag team, Allison's favorite tag team, the Rising Suns.
Yes, the Rising Suns.
We have Rising Sun 1 and Rising Sun 2. When I looked at their profile, that's where they're...
I was going to say, do you know anything about the Rising Suns?
So, I kind of, not really. Like, they're actually two prominent Japanese wrestlers, but I don't really know. I was trying to reading about them, but I didn't really know too much about them.
One of them, I can't remember which one it is. I think it's Rising Sun 2, is Tatsu Toshigoto, who would later on be, he would be pretty big in New Japan, I guess.
Yeah, that's the one.
But he would be in NWO Japan. And the other one is Kazuo Sakurada, who would be also pretty big in Japan. But neither one of those guys would make it very big in the United States.
Well, they had a fucking mask on. What the...
Well, right, they're wearing masks, but I'm guessing they were on excursion at this point if they did that in the 80s. But yeah,
I did like their finish though.
Yeah,
a springboard chop.
Yeah, that's awesome.
We got to bring that back, brother. The springboard chop.
Yeah, we need somebody to do the springboard chop.
That's a fantastic fucking finisher. And they face Sam Houston and Pat Tanaka. They basically beat their ass.
Yeah, so question for you that you probably may or may not know the answer to. So Pat Tanaka, is he the first Asian face wrestler?
Ooh. He might be. Unless there was somebody in like the 30s or something. I don't know. Because you got to consider, like, especially since World War II, every Asian wrestler that I can think of was a bad guy, but Pat Tanaka was clearly a face. Yeah.
So, Pat Tanaka, I think, is an American, but still, he looks Asian.
Yeah.
So that would have been good enough for these people, I'm sure. I don't know. It's like weird. Is he the first? I wonder if he's the first face. Asian, I almost said Oriental. Excuse me. Asian wrestler.
It's possible. Like I said, I don't know that deep into like who was over as a baby face, maybe in the 70s or the 60s. But maybe in this promotion he might be. Yeah, because like you were saying, like usually if you're from a not American background, you're a heel. All right.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's interesting. We'll have to look that up later. But up next we have the return of Magnum T.A. with his face all fucked up.
Yeah, and that looked bad.
I think I got like road rash
really
in that
bad.
bitch.
Yeah, that looked really bad.
So,
sorry, go ahead.
So what I'm thinking about this one is, so he lost the U.S. belt, all right, to Tully Blanchard, and
July the 21st.
Yes, and we're seeing footage of the match happen, and then, long story short, basically some random security guard gave him some brass knuckles, and that's how he knocked out Tully Blanchard with the brass knuckles, and that's why he got the big bruise on him. But that looked more like a motorcycle accident bruise to me than brass knuckle shots.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like he wrecked his bike or something, and that's what happened with that. But who could this security guard be? This blonde female security guard. Who could she possibly be?
Is it Precious? That's what I was thinking it was.
It's Baby Doll.
It's Baby Doll. Gotcha. That makes sense.
Yeah, because remember so what was going on around this time storyline wise, if I remember correctly? Now this is just coming off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure that so she was with Tully, and then Dusty had beat Tully for like Baby Doll services or something like that, which is why she comes out with him later on. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what had been going on at this time. But yeah, but Baby Doll had come out for that match as in a disguise to give Tully the weapon to beat Magnum T.A. with.
Oh, we'll get to them, Dusty and Baby Doll. Yeah. That interview was something else. Okay. So. so Tully Blanchard's explaining all this stuff, and he's like pissed during the whole time. And then later on, we actually get a good squash match with him beating somebody's ass. And when I was watching this whole thing, I'm like, fuck, bro. Like, if Adam Page looks like his fucking son now, okay,
yes. Yeah.
So that's what he looks like during the whole thing. I mean, he looked exactly like his son now. So, but then next we actually have an interview from Tully Blanchard himself, talk about him winning the U.S. belt, and he gives us like this like story about like, when I lost my TV belt to Dusty Rhodes and everything, I used to go to airports and I'd be late. They usually just let me in. When I didn't have the belt, they said I couldn't come on the plane. I was like,
well, he says that he was 2 minutes late and they had to open the door for him or something. Whereas before, when he was a champion, he could be 30 minutes late for a plane and they would hold it for him. So, so now he's back where he needs to be, where he can just show up whenever for his flight. Yeah, he has the nice silver belt, he was saying. And then it's like, this is only one step down from that, big gold belt that fucking Ric Flair has. But, he's basically saying he's back where he needs to be, on top. And then this is when we come back, and then this is when we get the Dusty interview, brother. And I could not believe I was watching this with my own two eyes. So like Dusty's there, and the first thing he says is, look how good I cleaned up this Jezebel over here. I was like, what the hell? And then like, I guess we kind of just jump in over here on the Retro Blood. It's not like we're watching this like episode by episode. So at first I'm thinking, okay, are they like together just like the man? No, this guy's just pissed off at her. Like, he's like, don't touch me. Don't you ever touch me. All right. That was like, and after she had this, like, she played this really well. Like, she had this big smile on her face, like, like she was getting too Dusty. But I'm wondering if like she just couldn't keep a straight face, because I couldn't keep a straight face. Like, when he turns around and says, he's like, don't you touch me. Don't you in your life ever touch me. Yeah. Like, I just busted out laughing.
Me too. I was like, my God.
That was so fucking funny. And that was that. I mean, I couldn't really believe what I was seeing. But
yeah. And then she says, like, it's really nice that Tully Blanchard's the U.S. champion. They just leave. So,
well, so she says, like, he says something about Tully cheating to win, and then she says, well, one thing I know is it's really good that it's good that Tully's champion again, and then he just turn around and walk off.
Yeah, because like the Dusty and Tully, they're a big rival, because Dusty's the guy who beat Tully for the U.S. for the television belt. He's still the television champion right now, but now Tully gained another belt, so they're still feuding at this time as well. And then they put Magnum in there as well too. So now we get this is when we get the Magnum squash, and he's so pissed off he does a belly to belly in the ring, does a pin, then he does a belly belly on the outside. And then once they leave, like, first of all, like I was saying, I was like, man, this is fucking Adam Page's dad right here. Okay, he looks exactly like they're just very similar. All right, with their presence and the style that they do. And I liked it when we were going to commercial, they called Magnum T.A. the American heartthrob.
Well, that's probably not far from the truth.
Yeah, I got that mustache and the mullet, brother. There you go. So now we're back with babyface Ric Flair, the traveling NWA World Champion at this time. He talks about how Magnum T.A. is going to pick up his the loss. He's going to take it like a man and then come back and be a strong challenger. All right. And this is when he's talking about him and Nikita. They're eventually going to fight each other. And, like Ric Flair, I noticed that the Ric Flair babyface around this time, like when he would come back, he would talk about everybody in the territory. Kind of like he was like the narrator. He's like, yeah, we got all these great tag teams coming over here. Like he's saying, like Mid-Atlantic's my favorite territory to wrestle at. There's just so much great talent around here. Like he's kind of like I like that, because he's kind of like the narrator to everybody. He's kind of like he feels like the actual world's champion. You know what I mean? Like, right. I like it when the world's champion comes out there and they're talking about how great their roster is. You know what I mean? Because he's excited for all these challengers coming at him. And I feel like that's a really good babyface like champion should be like that. You know what I mean? Like if you like, I get a heel, like he just says shit about everybody, but I feel like a really good babyface champion should be like that. Like we should have like Rollins come out there and be like, hey, I'm so, look at this big tag team we got going on over here. Look at this guy. Look, we just signed this guy. He's going to be a force. I can't wait to wrestle him. Stuff like that. You know what I mean? So I like this Ric Flair promo when he was talking about, the whole territory and how like hot the territory feels,
Yeah, like you were saying, AEW, I think, could really use that.
Well, when they have a babyface champion, yes. But, Samoa Joe, he ain't going to come out there and,
No, but I mean, they could use like their big names to that. Kind of like how when Edge came out at Wrestle Dream and then he was on the press conference at the end and he was talking about how like, oh, I came here because, facing Okada. Like I hated the way he put it. It sounded really stupid and egotistical. But like when he's saying like, facing somebody like Okada, that's really interesting to me.
Yeah.
Like it would be kind of cool if they come out and said, oh, I'd love to face these people. We just signed Okada, so I would love to, it'd be cool if I faced Okada in the ring, that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Like, they come out there on like an interview and something like, this AEW is taking over. Like we just got this guy coming in here. This guy is over here is making waves. You know what I mean? And then we got this old bastard Christian. You know what I mean? He's been tearing up and cheating. I can't wait to get in the ring with him and teach him a lesson. Stuff like that. Like
exactly.
I like those kind of promos when you're a babyface where you're like, you feel like the locker room leader guy. You know what I mean? Like you're the guy that you want to go after people and people are coming after you. You're like the main focus. I like that style world champion. And I feel like even in WWE that's kind of lost a little bit too. You know what I mean? Like that mentality of, because like you have your main people that you might talk about, when it comes to Raw, like they all do it. AEW, they all do it. But I like it when they talk about, like it'd be like if Roman, well, this would never happen. It'd be like if Roman Reigns came out there, we just signed that Braun Breaker guy. I can't wait to test my skills against him. You know what I mean? But that's just not going to happen. So this is when we get the Rock and Roll Brothers. They're actually just became the tag team champions. They do a quick, fun little match. The crowd's super hot for them. And then they come back. And then now they're talking about all the great tag teams that they want to face. I'm like, fuck, why is this lost in wrestling? I just don't get it. They're talking about, I'm so excited to get in the ring with these Midnight Express. They look like good challengers. We still got the Russians in our back. You know what I mean? We got, they just talk about all the teams. They got all these teams that they need to face, and they list about 3 or 4 teams that they all want to like fight and stuff, and they just can't wait to fight everybody. Yeah. And I'm thinking like, fuck, man, like that made me want to see these matches, like just them being very excited about going after and testing their skills against these tag teams that are out there. Yeah,
that's all. Yeah, that's almost a completely lost thing in wrestling now. Yeah. I mean, nobody does that. I mean, maybe I've heard FDR talk like that. Remember when they were going to go on their indie tour?
Yeah.
They're like, we're taking some time off. We're going to go on our indie tour to test to wrestle some of these great tag teams that aren't in AEW. But that's about it, honestly.
Yeah, just kind of a lost thing. I wish they would do it some more. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like nowadays they kind of just focus on whoever's like the number one contender. They only kind of just focus on them only. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like I like it when they build up challengers, like more challengers. We kind of saw that with MJF, where he had like 1,000 challengers and stuff, but it was just a little different. Mm-hmm. So we kind of ran out the show. We had this Manny Fernandez promo. I didn't really pay attention to it too much. And then we had the Abdul the Butcher squash match, which I thought it was okay. To ran out the show. So, but yeah, not. So like, what I've noticed, this is just me personally. I mostly prefer like their their studio show a lot more than like the Mid-Atlantic one. So
you prefer the studio show?
Yeah, I like it a little bit better. Like I don't know, I feel like it's like a little smoother. So.
Oh well, yeah, it's way more high. The production values are way higher.
Yeah,
for sure.
So,
and they have more than one light.
Yeah, exactly. But it's still not bad. It's still like you were saying before. Like this is like the building blocks to what we know Jim Crockett Promotions being with all these mega stars and all these people coming here And, they start stacking up their roster from 1985 onward, and they would just take over until that E man or to the F just got too big. So. Or even they got too big for their britches.
I mean, it was going to get huge. I mean, they were going to start branching out. But yeah, this was the beginning of that great era of Crockett wrestling that I love so much. One thing I did want to mention too is during the Rock and Roll Express promo, they're also out there with Manny Fernandez. And I don't know if you noticed this, and I wonder if they were doing this on purpose, but they kept quoting Huey Lewis and the News. The band, you're familiar with the band Huey Lewis and the News from the 80s?
Yeah, I've heard of them, yeah.
Big 80s band. So they had this song called The Heart of Rock and Roll. But I can't remember exactly. I should have written them down, but like some of the things that they kept saying sounded like quotes from Huey Lewis songs. Like when they talk about The Heart of Rock and Roll, and then they talked about there's something else. There's another Huey Lewis song that they quoted. That I thought was hilarious, but it would have been weird if they had not done that on purpose. But yeah, I wonder if that was like a gag they were trying to pull during the promo.
Well, like we've seen wrestlers like quote
sure,
metal songs. Jericho was known to do that a lot, in his early days as well too.
He still does it.
So
yeah, he still rips off metal bands. But yeah, anyway.
But speaking of metal bands though, have you ever heard of this? Have you ever heard of this band called Artillery?
Yes.
So around August of 1985, they actually released their first debut album, Fear of Tomorrow.
Yeah, so it's funny that you had mentioned that, because did we not talk about Artillery like a few months ago?
I think we did, yes.
Because I couldn't remember that, because I was either thinking about bringing up Artillery and then decided on something else. Or we did, but yeah. So the first Artillery album came out in August of 1985.
Yeah, and it's pretty good.
Artillery is a fucking great band.
Yeah, they're a Danish thrash band.
Yeah. All
right. And when I was listening to some of their tracks, they kind of remind me of like a thrash version of Black Sabbath. In a way.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Because they start off, first of all, a lot of their songs are long. And that's kind of like semi-new for thrash band, because most thrash bands, they kind of get their shit in and get out of there. But these guys' tracks, I mean, their shortest track on this album was 3 minutes and 27 seconds.
Yes.
And their longest one's about 6 minutes and 41 seconds. So I thought that was pretty interesting about them too. And what I was meaning by the Black Sabbath part, they start off, a lot of their songs kind of start off like very like slow and like melodic, and then they go straight into like the heavier thrash parts.
Yeah, so I'm a huge fan of Artillery. They came about too, like, I would say, I'm guessing, I don't know this for a fact, but I would say Artillery is a band that was influenced by Merciful Fate. And because thrash metal kind of came out of Merciful Fate. Metallica was hugely influenced by Merciful Fate, and they had gone to Denmark to record not their first album, but albums 2 and 3 and maybe 4. But yeah, they were friends with Merciful Fate, and I would say the Artillery was a band that kind of probably was influenced by Merciful Fate a lot, because they were like one of the biggest Danish bands, maybe ever. But
yeah, they're really good. Like, we'll play a little bit towards the end of the show. But like I like them. They're very, like I said, they're very like kind of a melodic kind of style of thrash band, and I like it where their songs kind of like build up to like the fast parts, and a lot of thrash bands around that we would see later on, even during this time, mostly would just get right into it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so like the Testament type sound or the Slayer sound. Yeah, that's like the American style, where it's just like straight into like. Straight like how Angel of Death starts, where it's just like straight into like a and then just goes. Yeah.
But good shit, man. Like we'll they only had one other album, which I think we talked about it before, which was the Terror Squad. But yeah, good stuff, man. Good stuff. I like them.
Yeah, check them out.
Check them out, everybody. But let's get into some who booked this shit for Fright Night, because we do have a lot to talk about when it comes to this Fright
Night. Yeah, who booked this shit? So this is exciting. I can't wait to talk about this.
So it's made by our boy Tom Holland. All right, Thomas Lee Holland, brother.
I'm a huge Tom Holland fan.
Yeah, because he did a bunch of stuff. He did the sequel to the Alfred Hitchcock Psycho, which we talked about that before here on the Retro Blood, which was a great film.
Yeah, we did that shit. We did it right as in our sequels month or something.
Yes,
I believe.
Apparently go ahead.
I was gonna say, he had written a bunch of really good movies that we're probably gonna do on this show eventually.
Yes,
like he did The Beast Within and Class of 1984.
Yes,
which are both classic movies. But yeah, this is his directorial debut, first movie he ever directed.
Yeah, because like you were saying, Allison, he was mostly a writer. Mm-hmm. Like he didn't direct Psycho 2, but he wrote it. So he wrote that screen. But yeah, like you were saying, this is his directorial debut, and he would also go on to direct the first Child's Play, which we're going to be later doing on the Retro Blood 2, and one of my favorite movies that scared me as a kid in the 90s, Thinner.
Yes, he did. I did not remember that until I looked him up, but he wrote and directed Thinner. He also made this movie called The Temp, which I watched because he made that in the 90s. I watched that because I was a huge Twin Peaks fan and Laura Flynn Boyle was in it. But yeah, he made this movie called The Temp. This guy's underrated. Like, he's definitely an underrated writer. He's written some really, really, really good movies.
Yes.
But yeah, don't know.
So
he should be doing more stuff now.
Yeah, he did, and he did write the story for the remake as well. But he didn't have anything to do with the sequel, which was kind of weird. In the 1988 sequel. So So while writing the script for Cloak and Dagger, Tom Holland amused himself when he conceived the idea of a horror movie fan becoming convinced that his next door neighbor was a vampire. All right. But he did not initially think the premise was enough to sustain a story. What's he going to do, Holland asked, because everybody's going to think he's mad. So that's kind of like how the story kind of like, he just thought of the actual idea.
Right.
So when he was like, when he was developing the story, he had that concept in mind. But it's like, well, what if we found a guy like, like a old school Vincent Price style character, all right?
Mm-hmm.
And then he would just add that in because he wanted to do elements of the old school, Vincent Price horror host and stuff like that in that local area. That's how he came up with the whole Peter Vincent idea. It was an homage to Vincent Price. And actually, apparently Vincent Price, he was actually a fan of this movie and the portrayal of Peter Vincent. He was a big fan of all that. So, which is pretty cool. So Holland wrote the film for himself to direct. In part, he was so disheartened by the film that was ultimately made from his previous screenplay, Scream for Help. And he had developed enough clout from the success of his screenplay for Class of 1984 and Psycho 2 and Cloak of Dagger that the head of Columbia Pictures said, let's take a chance on the hot screenwriter kid, brother. So basically, they're like, hey, you can, you're hot right now. You can do this story. You can write this story and direct it. So, at the time, like I said, a lot of his stories, they would get different directors for. But they're just like, well, fuck, we'll just, you're hot. You're the hot take right now, brother. So just go on there and we'll see what happens. Okay.
Which is weird because Tom Holland was 42 when this movie was made. I guess they consider him the hot kid.
The hot kid at this time, brother. All right, come on now. All right.
See, I think that obviously his initial thought was wrong because it wasn't enough to sustain a movie.
Yeah.
But I think that idea was great. I mean, the idea of like, okay, what if my neighbor is a vampire? Nobody's going to believe me. And I actually think that the horror host part is the weakest part of the movie, but we'll talk about that as we get into it.
Yeah, and so there was a couple of things that I thought that was interesting. There's a lot about this movie, Probably could do like a two-parter on this thing. But I thought one of the interesting concept was the two things. So first I want to talk about is some of the cast, because this one actually has a pretty loaded cast in it. Mm-hmm. And the character who played our main vampire, Jerry, all right, what was his name? Chris
Sarandon.
Chris Sarandon, yeah. Excuse me. He at first didn't even want to do this movie. All right. Because he's like, I'm not really into vampires. I don't want to do this horror stuff. I'm just not into it. So he turned it down and stuff. And then apparently he sat down. He actually read the script. And then he kind of turned around. It was like, oh, wait a minute. Like, this is actually like not some campy, campy horror film, whatever, blah, blah, blah. This is actually, it has some deep stuff to it. You know what I mean? So he liked it that way. That's why he kind of jumped on. And it was actually his idea. All right, to be the fruit eater. That was his idea, eating the fruit, or being a fruit bat.
Right.
So I thought that was pretty interesting. And there's something on the effects that I thought was pretty interesting as well too. Where do you remember the little skeleton, vampire skeleton creature bat thing that blew up at the end due to sunlight?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That thing was supposed to be the original effect for the Ghostbusters. It was supposed to be the original ghost in Ghostbusters. That was supposed to be the original prop for it. But the studio at Ghostbusters didn't want to do that because they felt like it was too scary. Which I thought was super interesting. Okay. Because the guy who worked on the Ghostbusters also worked on this film, Richard Edlund. All right, he was the head of visual effects for this film, and he was on Ghostbusters as well too. So what happened was they didn't want to use his prop for Ghostbusters, and he got this movie, and I guess they needed a bat creature because the Jerry, when he gets sunlight at the end, and he was like, well, fuck, I'll just use the fucking thing I was going to use for Ghostbusters in this film, and it'll fit perfectly. So I thought that was really neat. Around this time.
So yeah, I don't know. I mean, they might have been right. I mean, it might have been too scary for a comedy movie at the time.
Yeah, because Ghostbusters
fits perfectly here.
Yeah, the Ghostbusters are a little bit more like PG, very family friendly around this time. So obviously, the man who played Peter Vincent, Roddy McDowall.
Yes,
he was in like a ton of stuff, like in the early, 1930s and stuff, or 1940s.
Yeah, he was in Planet of the Apes.
Yes. I think that was like one of the biggest things I remember him from was the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah. Yeah, the chimpanzee.
And, he's in the Black Hole. All right. He did that movie before he did Fright Night. And he didn't do too much stuff in the 80s. Like, in the 80s, I guess his career was kind of winding down a little bit from the early 50s, or early 40s, later 40s to early 70s. Because in the 80s, he only did Fright Night. He did Fright Night 2, and he did this movie called Overboard, and then he did A Bug's Life. All right?
Yeah, yeah. So, he was definitely at the, in the waning years of his career, but I mean, like, I feel like he pulled this off really well. Like, he was really good at this role.
Yeah, I thought he was great. So the one that I wouldn't say caught me by surprise, but did a little bit, was our girl Amy Peterson that was in this movie, played by Amanda Beers, which I always known her as being Darcy on Married with Children.
Exactly.
I will never see her in anything else besides Darcy from Married with Children. And it's just super weird seeing her like young and flirtatious on this movie. I was like, man, my brain I just couldn't do it.
I mean, I was going to say that, this is 1985. Married with Children wasn't too long after this. It was only a couple of years later.
Yeah, I think she would start that. I think
87.
Yeah, like 87. Yeah, it was like 2 years after this movie or something. She would start that. And which is weird because, like, I mean, it's only like 2 years. And to me, she was paying how old do you think this Charlie guy was? Like college? You know what I mean? Right out of college, maybe?
I thought he was supposed to be in high school.
Yeah,
I thought all these characters were supposed to be in high school.
Yeah, like that. Me too.
Because he has a trigonometry test.
Yeah, like it's just weird, like to see like 2 or 3 years later, and then Marcy's playing like this older, stuck-up lady from next door. You know.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, she was almost 30 when they made this.
Yeah.
Like, she was like, she was born in 1958. She was almost 30. But yeah, so I mean, no, they're definitely. So speaking of things that you couldn't do today, like if you made this movie today, the way it's made here, like people would lose their fucking minds.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're definitely supposed to be in high school, which means that, Jerry's like, messing around with high school girls. Like they're definitely supposed to be in high school. They're like, 16 or 17 years old, probably.
Yeah, which is like super interesting.
Or 18, maybe 18. They could be seniors in high school.
Yeah. Another one I thought was interesting was we had a quick appearance. A hot blonde that was the first victim of Jerry. That was actually a Playboy playmate at this time, Heidi Sorensen. So yeah, I thought that was pretty cool, little clever casting right there. But yeah, I mean, like this film, like, I thought it did pretty well when it comes to some of the vampire lore that was on this film as well too, and just like a kind of like a different take in a way. And one thing before we get into it, I do want to say something that was kind of funny too. So apparently, due to a mix-up, Stephanie Jeffries had an awkward audition for Anthony Michael Hall's role in Weird Science. All right. And he made an impression on Jack Birch, who was suggested to him for Fright Night. Although he was not a horror movie fan, Jeffries loved the script, so he called his agent and declared that he would love to audition for Charlie Brewster's No, Steve. His agent replied, "You're wanted for the part of Evil Ed." So Joffrey was simultaneously baffled and heartbroken. It's like, what did they see in me that they should be this? Well, anyway, it worked out. So that's what he said. So basically, what happened to this guy, Stefan, who played, Evil Ed, I guess his agent sent him to go audition for the role of, like, one of the main guys in Weird Science, Anthony, and he wasn't like, I think the agent was supposed to send somebody else, you know what I mean, to the Weird Science thing, not him. Okay. So he didn't get that role in Weird Science, but he left an impression on the casting guy, Jack, for Weird Science, that they suggested it to Charlie, and then Stefan tried to audition for the Charlie Brewster character, and he didn't get it, but he's like, "Hey, but we got a part for you anyway. You're Evil Ed," some annoying 80s kid. All right. So I thought that was interesting.
I don't know. I don't know if that guy was going to get Weird Science anyway, because that casting was perfect.
Yeah.
No. But yeah, this is a better movie. So I mean, he wasn't going to beat out Anthony Michael Hall, I don't think, for that role.
Oh yeah,
Weird Science. But yeah, this is. I only know him from one other movie. He was also in At Close Range, which is one of my favorite films, with Sean Penn and Christopher Walken. It was a James Foley movie before he decided to start directing Twilight movies. Not Twilight movies. What's the other one about the bondage movies that everybody was into a few years ago? The Shades of Grey movies.
Oh, Shades of Grey.
Anyway, he directed a couple of those. So, but that guy used to make good movies, and At Close Range was one of them. And this guy was also in At Close Range, but that's a sidebar there, a little tangent.
He was also in 976 Evil. Come on, brother.
Yeah, true.
Which I can't wait to do that one. That one's gonna be an interesting one. So, but let's get on to it, everybody. Let's talk about this whole Fright Night and our opinions of the Fright Night itself. Let's get on into it.
Let's do it.
What would you do if you accidentally discovered the house next door was occupied by something not human? Something horrifying. Something unspeakably evil. No one believes you.
Mom, I didn't have a nightmare.
Not your mom.
They did kill a girl over there.
Not your girlfriend.
Charlie, is this some sort of a trick to get me back?
Not even the police.
Look, I know it's crazy. I know that, but look, Lieutenant!
It knows that you know. You'll do anything to protect yourself, but it will do anything to protect its secret. Fright Night. If you love being scared, this could be the night of your life.
All right, so we start off. We hear some TV and some stuff in the background about this like vampire girl. She wants to come in for a kiss, and he gets bitten. And then we realize we're watching a TV show, and what we're watching is Peter Vincent's Fright Night Theater. All right, so the whole background to some of this movie is our boy Charlie. He is a big fan of the late night horror host Peter Vincent. All right. And Peter Vincent, his character is more like, it's kind of like an Elvira, you know what I mean? Where he's like kind of like an Elvira. He is the guy who not only introduces you to the movies, but he also stars in them too. So it's like a double dude.
Yeah. So the way I took this was like he was like a guy who used to be an actor in horror movies, but now he's just a host. So he doesn't make movies anymore. He just hosts other horror movies, and some of those horror movies he starred in as well.
Yeah. So I think he does like a little bit of both, but we do see a lot of the films that he's in. And he's like an expert vampire hunter guy. All right. But at the time, our boy Charlie, he doesn't care. He's trying to get himself some ass. All right. From our girl Amy. And they were supposed to be studying together. But, like Charlie, he's going for second base and he gets cut on off. And he starts getting pissed at her. It's like, I've been going for you for 2 years and all I hear is stop it. I was like, oh boy, okay. We ain't gonna be here not in we ain't gonna be here not in any 2024 movies no more. And then they start apologizing to each other, and then now our girl Amy's like, this is gonna be the time. She starts taking off her shirt, but our boy Charlie sees two people outside carrying a casket into a house, and he's like fascinated by it.
It was a really cool coffin too. Like that thing looked awesome.
It did look awesome, and like I couldn't even tell what it was at first. It was like a different shape or style of a coffin, not like what you would normally see.
It was cool. It was like rounded on the top. It just looked awesome. It looked great.
So the first thing I noticed, besides our boy Charlie trying to get some ass, is he is a nosy neighbor. Him and his mom are both nosy neighbors. Okay, nothing's gonna get past them. So Amy, she's ready for her journey into her young sexual escapades, but Charlie, he's too fascinated with some coffins, and so she gets pissed off and she leaves. And he's like, "Hey, it's like I saw two guys carrying a coffin," and she just thinks he's making it up because he's been watching that Peter Vincent show too much. And they start fighting with each other. That's when the mom intervenes. The mom is like such a nothing character in this film. She just kind of has some random lines about like, oh, you kids are, you're fighting like married couples. I read it in a magazine and shit. And they're like, okay, we're only kids. So
they're like high school kids, and she's talking about how like they're acting like they're married or whatever. Yeah.
And then like Amy leaves and she's all pissed off because Charlie just like kind of blows her off because he's like super fascinated what's happening outside. And this is when we find out that we basically find out that they're both nosy neighbors. It's like, oh yeah, the guy Bob who used to live at that house next door, he sold the house to this new people and they're all moving in now. So that's what it is. It's like, oh, why are they moving in a coffin? I don't know. It's like, oh boy, those fucking nosy neighbors. All right.
So I think it's really strange, though, because he seems to, you're right, he is a nosy neighbor, but he seems to almost instantly jump to the conclusion that the guy's a vampire.
Yeah, because he has a coffin, yeah.
Like like he doesn't say that, but to me, like I took that as like he just instantly jumped to that conclusion.
Well, it makes sense because like he watches that Peter Vincent show all the time. So if he sees one thing, you know what I mean, that could possibly be something. Well, I wonder what he would think of me. He'd probably think I'm some sort of fucking monster hunter or something. All the shit I got in my house.
Yeah. I could just think of that, like him walking into your house, like, oh my god, this guy must be a monster hunter.
Oh my god, this fucking dude.
Fantastic.
So now so this is when we meet Evil Ed.
Yes.
So it's Ed, and then our boy Charlie calls him Evil Ed. And he's just making
Do we ever establish why he's called Evil Ed?
Just because he's an asshole, I guess. That's what I got.
Okay, I guess so.
So they're at school and everything, and Amy's still upset with him. And this is also, too, when we see Charlie. He has some sort of, like, Mustang that doesn't have a finished paint job, and it annoyed me the whole movie. Did you see this thing? It looked like a fucking cow or some shit. Like,
Well, I mean, you can see the Bondo in it where he's fixing, like, the dents that it probably had. But, okay, so that annoys you, but that, like, ding on your Mustang doesn't annoy you.
Well, it annoys me, too. But at least that's only one little corner. This whole thing was all shredded and painted and shit. Just paint the shit, motherfucker. Right. Paint it. All right? It's not cool to have your car stripped like that. All these car guys are going to be like, oh, yeah, you got to do that for the fucking back. I don't care. Paint that shit, all right? So now Charlie comes home. This is when he sees the prostitute, which is known in the movie, the hot blonde, the Playboy playmate. He looks at her because she's asking for, where's this address at? He's like, oh, it's next door. He's like, damn. And then he's all like, he goes up to the mom, and they're still talking about the neighbor moving in because they're still nosy. All right? Mm-hmm. He's talking about the next door neighbor. And then the mom might think he's gay because he has really nice taste in fucking decorations or something. And our boy Charles like, I don't think so. So he was coming next door. And then this is when Charlie's upstairs. He's like studying, and he hears a big scream next door. All right. And apparently, another thing too. I don't know if the mom is like a deep sleeper, but she slept through like all these screaming and crunching and destroying like constantly. Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe she put in some like earbuds or something. I don't know.
Maybe she has like earplugs and she can't hear, but yeah, like all the screaming she seems to sleep through. I mean, she basically sleeps through like the big vampire fight. Yeah, mostly,
pretty much. So then we see at Amy and Charlie, they're making up at dinner time right now. It's come to some sort of diner, and they're apologizing. And then Charlie sees on the screen that the blonde that he ran to died. And that wasn't the first victim, too. She was like the second victim. So there's been 2 dead women around here. And he noticed, like I said, he noticed that girl. So now he's starting to put some 2-2 stuff together. Like, well, I saw a coffin go into his house, and this girl who went to his house both died. So, you know what I'm going to start doing? I'm going to start spying on these motherfuckers. That's what I'm going to start doing. Okay? And of course, Amy, she's still pissed. And she's so pissed that she put some food on his face because he's not paying attention to her. So this is when we have our boy Charlie doing some peeping Tomming. All right.
Yes.
When he's seeing our boy Jerry seducing a young lad, showing her tatas off, and he is going to he's basically about to kiss her. And like, it was weird though, because it looked like first the girl stares right at Charlie, and then Jerry stares right at Charlie, and they both stare at him. And then he like lowers the curtain down, then he bites her neck. And of course, Charlie's freaked out.
Yeah, like I thought that scene was really cool. So now he knows Jerry's a vampire for sure. But I thought that was really cool. That scene was real when Jerry was standing behind the girl, and then also there's also murders going on. I think we forgot to mention that.
No, I did mention that. I said there was 2 murders that just happened.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah, it was a prostitute. All right, it was on the television there, Allison. All right, yes, the prostitute died, and somebody before her died as well too. All right.
But yeah, I thought that scene was really cool where he's standing behind her, and then like she like looks directly at him through the window, and then when Jerry looks at him, that scene just was shot really well. It just looked great.
So Charlie's freaking out. He tries to tell his mom about it. She blows him off, and then he goes outside, and this is when we see another person who's helping out the vampire dispose of the body, and we find out that his name is going to be Billy Cole. All right, and I don't think he was like a servant, but they didn't really say what he was. Like, I know, so he can walk during the daytime, this Billy guy can. And we find out later he's some sort of mutant creature, but I just thought he was like the familiar. So some vampires have like a familiar. So
like the Renfield character.
Yes. And we can see that this vampire likes to eat fruit because he's a fruit bat. And the mom comes out, asks for Charlie, and then now Billy and Jerry both know that this kid Charlie has been like kind of spying on them. All right. And this is when Charlie the next morning is telling his mom and Amy, okay, that the guy next door is a vampire. All right. And I need to go to the police about him because he killed like another person. Like, this is like the third victim that he's killed. All right.
Yeah.
And they're telling him, like, you can't just go to the police and tell him he's like a vampire and stuff. And of course, Amy just thinks like he's telling all this stuff to get her back. Because it's all about her brother. Okay.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, I see her point of view because now she finally wants to like fuck Charlie. And now Charlie's all of a sudden interested or all of a sudden thinks that his neighbor is a vampire, which to her is so ridiculous that it must be an excuse just to blow her off.
Yes, pretty much. And then our boy Charlie's like, okay, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the police, but I'm not going to mention that vampire part. That's his plan. Okay. So now he grabs the police chief, lieutenant, or no, actually he was the homicide detective. So they go up to the vampire's door. All right. And this is when we have Billy come in, and there was a scene earlier that this is a really quick scene that Charlie met Billy really quickly because Charlie tried to sneak into the house, but Billy caught him. All right, because he was trying to go to the basement because obviously that's where the vampire would be sleeping, would be the basement. And I'll bring up the basement later on because there's something I need to ask you, Allison, about this particular basement. Okay.
Okay.
But let's get into the detectives there. And they're asking, like, they're just moving in, do you live here with somebody else? Where's he at? You know what I mean? And they're going on. And then our boy Charlie just can't help himself. He's like, well, let's go look down in the basement. They're like, why? It's like, why should we go look down in the basement? It's because he might be doing his internal sleeping. And they're like, what? He's like, he's a vampire. He's a fucking vampire, and he's been killing all these women. And then, of course, there's lieutenant's like, oh, fuck, this kid tricked me. All right? So now he takes him out of there, and he's like, kid, don't talk to me again. If you come with this bullshit again, I'll arrest your ass. All right, and he leaves.
Yeah, like, what did he think was going to happen?
Well,
you know what I mean? Like,
I guess, like, because, like, he was saying, like, I saw a body yesterday, and then Billy's like, well, it's just fucking trash. There isn't no fucking body. So I guess Charlie was just gonna, like, I don't know what his plan was, to be honest with you. Like, his plan was
he makes a lot of really strange decisions in this movie.
I think he was like trying to get Billy to admit to the cop that he was a vampire and they're mutant vampires, but like, but it just didn't work. You know what I mean? This is like there's no evidence around there, and he probably needed to do a little bit more research before he jumped right in there with the cop. That's probably what he needed to do. So now Charlie's like, oh, fuck. Like, this Billy guy knows I'm onto him. Billy's going to go tell the vampire guy that I'm onto him, and I'm going to be fucked. Okay? And then he looks at his watch, and it's like 4:23, and he's, like, getting super worried. Mm-hmm. So now, like, he goes to his friend Ed's house. And he tells him all about what happens. Like, hey, this vampire's going to kill me and everything. And Ed's like, he doesn't believe any of this shit. He just thinks it's all imaginary. But Charlie's like, okay, well, I'll pay you, and then can you help me? And I was thinking, like, okay, hold on a second. So we're led to believe that our boy Charlie watches Peter Vincent like constantly. He's a huge fan, right?
Yeah.
Do I got that right?
Yes.
So why would he go to Evil Ed to get ideas about how to kill a vampire? Is Ed like a more of a fan or something?
The only thing I can think of is that Ed is just his friend for some reason, even though he's an asshole, and he's just trying to get him to brainstorm ideas because all of his other ideas are terrible. Like
this guy's fucking
telling the guy's a vampire.
Yeah, but then his idea is like, well, get a cross, get some garlic, and get some holy water. I was like, well fuck,
that sounds like a.
Are you telling me Peter Vincent didn't say any of that shit on the show? Uh-huh.
Right. Well, right. I see what you're saying. Like, why did he not already know that? But I mean, maybe that's the best answer that Evil Ed had at the time. I mean, that's probably what I would say if you came to me and said, "Hey, I got a vampire next door. What am I going to do?" And I'm like, "Well,
yeah, but Evil Ed, he was saying it out of a comedic, sarcastic purpose."
True. Right, because nobody believes that there's a vampire next door. Because that's ridiculous.
And then he did say, though, "Wait, you might be in luck though, because the vampires need to be invited into your house. So the only person that could invite in is the owner." So you might be lucky of the vampire. Because Charlie thinks the vampire is just going to come for him at nighttime and kill him, which is probably right. Mm-hmm. So now Charlie goes home. All right. And then next thing you know, the mom already let fucking the vampire in. And this is when he was like, oh, shit. So the vampire's already been let in.
Yeah. So that was interesting because they kind of imply that he doesn't need permission to enter the house, which is, like a vampire lore thing.
No.
But
well, hold on. You got that. No, they implied that he did need to be let in. That's what Evil Ed.
The mom let him in.
Yeah. Evil Ed said only the right owner can let you into the house. So Charlie thought he was going to be safe. But then the mom just invites him all over. So he does need to be invited.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. That's true. Okay.
Yeah. So, but yeah, like this vampire, Jerry, he did have some stuff that's not normally like a vampire, but there was a lot of stuff that was like normal vampire lore. Like he has to be let into places, he has to be invited in, crosses that have faith in him will hurt him, and holy water will hurt him and shit, and sunlight. So he did have like the normal vampire, lore like effects to him in this film. So, but this is also too when we get so Charlie, this is like when they meet for their first time, and Jerry's already on to him. You know what I mean? And and of course our boy Jerry, he's kind of like a very heartthrob style vampire, so all the women love him. Even the mom was going crazy over him as well too. And I like when he leaves and he comes back, like the Jerry does, and like Charlie finds him in his room, and he's all like, we don't want to wake up your mom over here, and he just throws his ass into the closet, making all types of sound.
Yep. So that was really cool. That stunt was pretty amazing. I'm not even sure how they did it. I watched it several times, but is that a real person?
I mean, I'm guessing, yeah. This is the
like
80s,
a real
brother.
stuntman, and like somehow they were able to throw that guy through that door. Like I don't know, like it was almost all on camera too. I mean, it was real quick, but like like you could see like the actor grab him, and then he like flips over into the door, like, and like it looked like it couldn't even possibly have been like a mannequin or like a dummy or something. Like I don't know, that was a pretty amazing stunt. I love that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure this guy was stuntman for it, but it did look really good. I just like it how he's saying, "Let's not wake up your mom." Then he throws his ass into a fucking closet. Like she ain't gonna hear that
sleep through.
Yeah, she sleeps through it. Yeah. So now, like the Jerry is basically saying, like, you have disturbed my sleep. You've been spying on me. You got the police involved. All right, and you deserve to die. All right, and like he's saying, like, but I'll give you a choice that I never had. If you just forget about me, I'll forget about you. All right. Mm. And basically, when he's saying that, he grabs his cross that was given to him by Evil Ed, and he starts using it, and then the vampire gets all pissed off, so he's going to take him through the window, and then we eventually see Charlie stab him with the pencil. All right. And then now Jerry is turning into his full vampire mode, and the mom finally wakes up, and this is when Jerry leaves to get on out of there. And the mom was shutting her door, and then she comes out, And then Charlie just saying, "Oh, don't worry, I just had a nightmare." All right. So we're seeing that he doesn't want to tell his mom anything because obviously the mom's not. She doesn't really believe him that much anyway, and he kind of wants to take care of this by himself and not involve his mom with it. So now he goes back up. He hears the phone ring, right? And he goes back up to his room, and it's Jerry. All right. And he basically saying, like, you know, I can see you right now, and I'm going to finish this. And hey, by the way, that noise you heard outside, I destroyed your car. I was like, fuck. The car is already destroyed. All right. And then he's like, I was like,
that would have been a great reply.
I was like, but,
and that thing was a piece of shit.
That thing was chucked anyway. All right. My Mustang, brother. And then he's like, but what I'm going to do to you tomorrow is going to be way worse. I'm going to destroy you tomorrow night. And of course, Charlie's like, oh, fuck. So now, like, Charlie's kind of figuring out what he needs to do, right? So his idea is, I'm going to go talk to Peter Vincent. And I'm going to get his ideas of how to kill a real vampire, because, you know, every time I watch this show, Fright Night, Peter Vincent's saying he's a real vampire hunter. He really believes in vampires, and he's a real vampire hunter because he killed like 100 of them. So what do?
Yeah.
You just go to the studio that he's at. Like, you don't need a pass. You don't need credentials. You don't need any of the stuff to go visit. No, you just go onto the lot and you catch him right when he gets out of there.
Yeah, which also happens to be in the same town that you live in as well.
Yes, it just it all worked out. So that's
it all worked out perfectly. But yeah, Charlie seems kind of like an idiot. I mean, his idea is that this guy that's an actor would know how to kill a vampire.
Yeah,
because he plays one on television.
Yeah, I mean, come on, it's real, brother. It's a shoot.
It's like like when I next time I need to have medical help, I'll wait outside the set of Grey's Anatomy and let one of those guys come out and take care of me.
Yeah, of course. I mean, come on, man. Yeah, it's like it's a shoot, brother. I know it's real. All right,
it's a shoot.
So Peter meets with or Charlie meets with Peter, and Peter just thinks like, okay, do you just want my autograph? He's like, no, man. I really have a vampire next door at my house. And Peter just thinks he's nuts, and he just drives away. He's like, this fucking nut kid. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
He's like, he's trying to be very serious about it. And then this is when Peter also says, like, hey, like, my show got canceled. People don't want to see vampires anymore. They just want to see a madman hacking up teenagers.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, boy. I bet that did happen. Because, this is the part of the 80s where slashers was pretty high around this particular time period. So
yeah,
which is
that's definitely a thing. Yeah, that's definitely a thing. Like, the slasher movies were definitely pushing, or had by this point well pushed out the the classic horror tropes.
Yes.
So yeah, it's definitely changing time.
So now Evil Ed and Amy show up at Charlie's house. They walk up in that thing. There's a bunch of candles everywhere. They look at Charlie, and Charlie's basically saying, "Listen, guys, there's a vampire next door. He wants to kill my ass, but I'm gonna get to him first. Cause he's like sharpening up like a steak. He's like, I'm gonna put this steak when he's sleeping through his heart." And they're all thinking like, this guy's fucking crazy, all right? Like, oh shit. He's like, they're like, I don't know if like this Peter Vincent was some sort of like town dude, but Amy's like, well, why don't you just go talk to Peter? I was like you could just talk to this actor whenever you want. He's like, I tried to do that, but he blew me off, so I'm just gonna have to do this. It's like, and then basically Amy and Ed were like, listen, don't do anything. We will figure this out together. You can't just walk into the vampire's place alone with no plan. You're gonna die. So promise me you won't do anything. All right? And he's like, he basically looks at Amy. He's like, you don't believe me, do you? He's like, I do believe. And she doesn't say these things. She says, I love you. And then she leaves. I thought they were going to go get the cops and be like, yo, this guy is crazy. Like, you got to put him up before he kills his next door neighbor. But no, like Amy and Evil Ed literally go to Peter Vincent's house. Like, didn't you get that? Like, I thought like they were like, obviously they didn't believe him. They thought he was going crazy now.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And
let's go talk to
he's
Peter
about
Vincent
to go
too,
murder somebody. Okay. Who he thinks is a vampire. What are we gonna do? Let's go to the actor's house. Let's not go to the fucking police. Okay. Like, what if he was imagining it? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, let's go to the actor's house.
The only thing I could think of is what they were trying to do was they were saying, okay, well, he'll believe Peter Vincent if this guy tells him he's not a vampire.
Yeah.
So let's go get Peter Vincent, which is kind of what they do.
Yeah, that's what they do.
But like, you know, yeah, but like, let's go get Peter Vincent because he'll believe him. But yeah, but you're right. He's about to go murder his neighbor because he thinks he's a vampire.
Yeah.
So let's go talk to the actor.
Let's go get the actor, brother.
And they know where he lives. That's the thing, is like they know where Peter Vincent lives.
Yeah, like, why are they? Didn't he ask that?
It's
Like,
a
how did
different
you
time.
find me? Like, so like,
I mean, it's a different time. Like you couldn't do that now, but you could also think of Peter Vincent's like a local horror host, like he's only on TV in that local area.
Yeah.
So it would almost be like finding like, you know, a local news person, which if you hung around the news station, you would probably see them because they're not like celebrities. But like, but finding out where they live today would be impossible, but maybe not in 1985.
Yeah.
You know, you might be able to look them up in the phone book or something. I don't know.
Yeah. So Ed and Amy get to Peter Vincent's house, right? And he lets him in for some reason. And he is excited because they're asking like, hey, we got something really important to talk about. He's like, okay, well, let me go get my autograph stuff. He's like, we don't want your autograph. He's like, what's more important than my autograph?
That is a pretty funny recurring
Yes.
joke. Is that he thinks everybody wants his autograph, but nobody. But
Nobody does. And they're like, okay, you know that I don't know if you met this dude yet, but we have this friend named Charlie. Yeah, I met that nutcase. That's what the guy was saying. He's like, could you just like go and tell him like, you know, vampires are not real or something like that? He's like, well, I tried. I'm not going to do that. I'm so busy. I got all these films and acting stuff. And she's like, well, I got $500. He's like, oh, I'll take it. What do you need me to do?
Oh, that's so sad. But that's like, that's basically what cons are like now, right? Like,
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Pretty much.
I used to be in this movie, but now, you know, for $30, I'll take a picture with you.
Yes, exactly. So their idea is to call up this next door neighbor, Jerry, and they're going to stage a whole meeting where they're going to like prove that Jerry's not a vampire. So they called the neighbor up, Jerry, and he introduced himself. This is Peter and everything. He's like, hey, you know, can we just come to your house with this Charlie guy and we'll just do some act and I'll give you some holy water and crosses and you're not a vampire. He's like, okay, well, the problem is I'm like a big religious guy now, so you can't bring any crosses. He's like, okay, fine. He's like, well, you can't bring any holy water here. It's like, it's not fucking holy water, just tap water, okay? Just drink the shit.
Yeah.
So then they leave. And then they agree, okay, as long as you don't bring any crosses and they're just tap water, we can do all this stuff. We'll meet. We got to do it tonight, though, at 6 o'clock because, you know, I'm very busy during the day. And then they start they start talking about some of the props that Peter had during his movie Orgy with the Vampire.
Yes. Sounds like a classic.
Classic one. And they're also talking about this little reflection, you know, like some of the stuff he did like during his they're bringing up like how you can't see a vampire's reflection in a mirror, and he brought his little like screen, this little reflection booklet that he used for a prop in his movies. He's bringing that with him as well too. So now they all meet outside around 6 o'clock. Peter's a little late. We have Charlie, Amy, and Evil Ed there, and they all meet with Peter outside. Peter gets out of the car. Charlie's like, well, how come you're not bringing all your steaks and stuff with you? He's like, I don't need that. We got to prove that he's a vampire first, okay? He looks at the house. Right. Is like, oh, yes, there could be a vampire here. So they go up to the door. They come inside. They all get meet by Billy. All right, lets them all in stuff. Jerry shows up very, very on the top of the stairs. You know what I mean? Very flamboyant up in the stairs. Very nice. he sees right away Amy. Okay. He starts flirting with her right away. All right. Because there was a scene where Charlie did see a picture, like an old painting of this girl who looked exactly like Amy. All right. And they start, talking about what Charlie has done with Jerry lately. Calling cops and over here. Like, nobody knew that Jerry called the cops on him. Or nobody knew that Charlie called the cops on Jared and everything. And they were like kind of shocked about that. And, talking about the coffins and everything. And then now they just want to do the test with the holy water. And you can see at first Jerry was like, okay, very slowly doing it. He even checks the water in the fire, which I thought that was very creative. And
yeah, that was cool.
And he drinks it. There's like no problem at all. And, Peter says, yes, this water is all blessed. I had the pasture blessed and everything. There's no problem at all. And then eventually Charles is like, well, all right, maybe I was wrong and stuff. Like, and they're about to leave. But our boy Peter actually brings out his little flip mirror. And while they're talking, he can see that there's no reflection in there. And he's like, wait a minute. He starts getting a little nervous and he drops the mirror and it crashes. And Jerry's like, there's a problem over here. It's like, no. We're getting out of here. Let's go. And then Charlie notices that he's a little nervous. All right. And then they're getting back in the car. And Charlie's like, why are you so nervous? Did you see something in there? What did you see? All right. And then he eventually gets out of him. Peter says, he didn't have any reflection. I'm getting the fuck out of here. All right. So he leaves. And Charlie's like, oh shit. I knew something was up. All right. So now Charlie, Amy, and Evil Ed, they're leaving. Or they're walking Amy back home. But Evil Ed, he wants to take the scary 1980s alleyway. All right. And they're like, I'm not going to that fucking alleyway. You crazy? There could be vampires in there. I'm just thinking, you know what? Like, there could be like fucking actual like murderers and rapists in that alley.
Yes.
This guy is worried about a fucking vampire. And he was like, screw you, asshole. So he goes down the alley. He tricks him. He does like a little joke on him and stuff. Like he's getting attacked. And then they leave. And now Evil Ed's going down the alley. And I guess Jerry, so he finds the piece of glass on the floor. All right. And now he thinks, okay, well, now all these guys they're on to me now. So I'm going to go take them out one by one. So he takes out Evil Ed first. He kills him in the alley, and he turns him into a vampiric creature.
Yes.
All right. So I thought that part was pretty cool.
Yeah, so he's not like, I was going to ask you about that. So is Ed actually a vampire, or is he like some kind of like vampire controlled creature? Which I guess you think he's a vampire controlled creature. Yeah,
I think pretty much a vampiric creature, I would assume.
Yeah.
He's not like a full vampire on here.
Right, because he doesn't have the same kind of change that, spoilers, Amy will have. But, yeah.
So he gets turned. They hear like a scream. Amy and Charlie do. And they're like, okay, Amy just thinks it's Ed joking. All right, then they hear like this lighting explosive. They start getting very nervous. And now Jerry is following them. All right. So they notice that they notice that Jerry is following them now, so they get super nervous. So you know what they do, Allison?
What could they do?
They sneak into a 1980s restaurant party club kitchen.
Yes.
So it's a full restaurant connected with a nightclub.
Yeah, like almost like a kind of a goth club, sort of.
It was very interesting. Sort of. It's like, so we have a full restaurant, right? But like, they're cooking, but nobody's eating. They're all dancing on the floor.
Yeah. Almost like the.
Is that for like afterwards? Like what?
I guess so, in case you get hungry from all the dancing. I mean, it's almost like that other movie, The Hunger, where I think it is where the people are swimming naked in the pool.
Yeah.
Next door to where they're eating dinner. Like, so that was like a combination pool restaurant. And this is a combination like nightclub restaurant.
Like, I've been to some nightclubs, right? And I don't think they maybe during the day they might have a full restaurant, but like this shit was still, they were still cooking in the kitchen.
Yeah, it was really strange.
While this club is coming on.
Like, I understand why they might go in there because there's a lot of people, you know, and he's not going to kill us around a bunch of people. But, but it is really strange. Yes. So
during this stuff, Evil Ed shows up at Peter Vincent's house. All right. Mm-hmm. And Evil Ed tricks him, lets him all in. And this is when we realize that Evil Ed has now turned into a vampire Evil Ed. And he starts attacking Peter Vincent.
Yes.
And he's attacking him stuff. And this is when Peter uses a cross on his forehead. And he's getting like, so this is another part that didn't really make sense in this movie. And I'll bring this up. There's two things that didn't make sense in this movie to me, which I'll bring up here pretty quickly. So the first one was Peter used the cross on Evil Ed, right? And it burned his forehead. Mm-hmm. Okay, remember that for later. All right, everybody, remember that. Just remember this part for later, and I'll bring it up. So we're remembering two things. We're remembering the basement, okay, that the vampire sleeps in, and remembering Peter Vincent using a cross. That's the two things I want everybody to remember. All right. So he uses this. Evil Ed's all freaked out, and he gets on out of there, and he's like, the master's going to come for you for hurting me. Okay. So now Charlie is trying to call the cops to this club, and the cops just totally blow him out. They don't give a fuck about him. All right. And like Charlie is like, hey, Amy comes up with the idea, hey, I think you should probably like try to call Peter again and see if he has any ideas to come help us out. Okay, because we're stuck. Maybe we can try to convince him, you know, he knows what's going on. So now Charlie's like, okay, let me give him a call. So during all this stuff, Jerry shows up, and now we're getting some 80s club music going on. So dance sexual club music going on here, brother. And now Jerry is drawing Amy towards him. They start bumping and grinding and everything and start dancing on there. All right. And like eventually Charlie gets off the phone with Peter, who totally ignores him. And he sees him. All right. And he tells Jerry to let her go. And then Jerry just kisses her. And and then like he's trying to punch him. Charlie starts to punch him and stuff. And then he just knocks him down. And there's the security guards come over, and they take Charlie out, and they're telling Jerry to leave. And then Jerry turns into a vampire and just beats everybody's ass. And then the whole club gets all wild, and everybody starts running around and freaking out. All right, and this is when Jerry is leaving with Amy. All right, and he evil laughs at Charlie, taking her out. And of course, Charlie's like, "No, don't go."
So now he's basically lost his girlfriend to the vampire.
Pretty much, yes. And she's
Which, I mean, makes perfect sense because he's way cooler than Charlie for sure.
Pretty much, yeah. She's been seduced, brother.
Absolutely.
So now Charlie goes to Peter and he needs some help, and Peter's just afraid. He's like super afraid. He's like, listen, I'm not a real fucking vampire hunter. Okay? I just played one on fucking TV and I'm super nervous and I'm trying to get the fuck out of town. And like Charlie keeps convincing him, I need your help. You're Peter Vincent. You're the man to help me out. I was like, no. I ain't that guy. All right. Leave out here, homie. All right. I ain't that guy.
Yep.
So now we're back at the vampire house. Amy is all dressed up in white by an 80s fire with some 80s love music going on. That's my whole notes right there, by the way.
Yes.
She sees her twin in the painting. And Jerry says, yeah, I knew that girl back in the day. She reminds me of you. All right. And then he starts seducing her some more there, brother. All right. And then eventually Amy takes off her shirt. And our boy Jerry goes in for the kiss. And he eventually bites her on the neck. And blood comes down her back.
That was awesome. I love the way that looked, where he's like biting her in the shoulder or whatever. Yeah. He also doesn't bite her on the neck. He bites her in the shoulder.
Yeah, the shoulder. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's like blood running down her back. That looks fucking fantastic.
Yeah, this whole scene looked good. Like, I like the music went well with it. I thought the seduction. That's the one thing, a good thing about this vampire character, Jerry. Like I said, he is the, out of all the movies he watched, I think he did the seduction of the females the best.
Yeah, I agree.
So now Charlie has a cross necklace. He looked like some sort of like gothic gangster rapper with his like there's a cross necklace on there.
Yeah.
All right, and his plan is just, I gotta go to the house and rescue Amy as I can. And of course, Peter just shows up out of nowhere and he's ready for action. So he's a crybaby in the other scene, and now he just got some guts randomly, and now he's here to help. Okay.
Yeah, well, he's got to do it. He's got to do it at some point, right?
Yes. So now he goes up. They try to go to the front door, but they're like, maybe we should go to the back. But the front door just opens, and now Peter is nervous. So he starts talking to himself. Okay. Mm-hmm. So now they walk in the house and they see Jerry, and Jerry's like, "Welcome to Fright Night, for real." All right. And yes. And there's something I just totally forgot to mention. Jerry did tell Charlie, if you want to see Amy again, I need you to come. I need you to bring Peter Vincent. The reason he wants Peter Vincent there is because he doesn't respect Peter Vincent, because Peter Vincent had a bunch of TV shows killing vampires, and obviously he's a vampire. So, yeah.
So he might know how to kill a vampire.
Yes. Well, no, like he doesn't like him. He wants to torture this guy because he's a fake. He's a phony.
Right.
So here's one of the things that I was semi-confused on. So they so now he's introducing himself. He's like, "Welcome to the real Fright Night, for real." And then our boy Peter brings out his cross. It says, "Stay back, spawn of Satan." He starts using his cross on him. And then Jerry's like, "Well, that cross ain't gonna work because you don't really have faith." And I was just thinking, wait a minute, hold on a second, brother. So
all right,
the cross is gonna work on Evil Ed. He has enough faith for that, but the cross is not gonna work on Jerry.
Yes. So this is the only thing about this movie that I don't like. I love the idea that you don't believe in this, so it's not going to work. Which is what a tenet of faith is. Faith is about believing in something with no proof. But it works on Evil Ed. So that just annoys the shit out of me.
Yeah.
I mean, it just, so I love the idea, but I love the idea that they're using, but it doesn't make any sense because it worked on Evil Ed.
Yeah. So the cross doesn't work. So now Jerry knocks him out. Okay. And then Charlie's cross does work though. His faith is true, so it is working on Jerry.
Believes.
Yeah, it really is. But then Cole slaps his ass, not literally his ass, but he slaps his ass down. He slaps his ass, not his ass, but his face. Okay, down the stairs. All right, and then Peter's like, "Fuck this shit," and he runs. He just runs away. He's like, "Fuck y'all, I'm out of here." Okay,
right.
So Peter goes all the way to Charlie's house to get his mom. I don't know what the fuck the mom was supposed to do, but he was looking for the mom. And he finds out the mom wasn't there, but Evil Ed's there. And now we have this big fight scene between Peter and Evil Ed. And Evil Ed turns himself into a wolf. Okay?
Yes.
And Peter fell onto a desk. And while the wolf is going to attack him, they're on the staircase. The wolf jumps onto him, and Peter impales the wolf while he does it, and then the wolf falls onto the chandelier and falls down. And we can see now that there's a long scene of the Evil Ed being impaled and then turning back into a vampiric creature and then turning back into normal, and then he melts.
Yes.
Okay. We got all that? Yes. So now Jerry takes Charlie to Amy after Billy knocked his ass out. And he puts him next to Amy, and he leaves a stake there, like a wooden stake. All right, and then this is when we figured out that now Amy has been turned into a vampire, but she's not necessarily awake yet. But Jerry basically says, she's either going to kill you or you got to kill her. So it's pretty fucked up. And then now... Peter is getting him he got himself together. He goes back to the vampire house and he hears Charlie through the room, and he tells Charlie, "Hey, make a bunch of noise, and I'm gonna try to break you out of here." So Charlie starts making all these noises. Jerry just thinks that Amy has awakened, all right, but she hasn't awakened yet. So they break out, they get out of the room, all right, and then their plan is like Peter tells them like the way we can turn Amy back to normal is we have to kill Jerry, because if you kill Jerry, then if she's still not been impaled yet, she can turn back into her normal state, all right. And then he's like, yeah. And then this part was semi-funny though. Like Charles like, well, how do you know all this stuff? He's like, well, so far everything that's been in the movie so far has been working, so I just assume that's gonna work.
Which, hey, that's as good a plan as any, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if the movie stuff works, keep doing it.
They keep doing it. So they run into Billy. All right, he's there, and their idea to kill Billy because they think he's human is the gun. So Peter comes out in the gun, shoots his right ass in the fucking forehead. But then our boy Billy gets back up. And then our boy Peter's like, oh shit, that didn't work. He's like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to Loomis his ass. So he shoots him 6 more times. All right. And he's still alive after that. All right. And then eventually he grabs Peter. All right. And then eventually Charlie stabs him. All right, and then this is when we see that Billy is some sort of like slimy 80s creature because he just melts.
Yes, so that was kind of gross, where it's like a yellow goo like coming out of his arms, and then it turns into like a dust.
Yes, and then his head like rolls off like some like burnt skull head.
Yeah, with a really, really nice skull prop that we got at the end.
So now they check on Amy. She's getting worse. All right. Jerry commands Amy to wake up. All right. And you need to kill them. You need to kill both of them. That's what she wants her to do. All right. And then they know that he's on the roof right now. So Charlie goes up to the roof to go try to find Jerry. And then Peter goes to see Amy. All right. And like we're saying, like, the cross that Jerry has, all right, works on the vampire, but now Amy is about to attack Peter, and now his cross works with her now. So apparently, Vincent's cross will work on Jerry's vampiric demon creatures, but it won't work on Jerry himself.
Maybe that's it. Maybe it's like the belief is strong enough to work on them, but not on the master vampire.
It's the only thing I could think of. It's just kind of weird. So Charlie's looking all over the house for Jerry. All right. And then Jerry pops through the window. All right. About to attack his ass. Okay. And then he turns into a bat. Okay. And he's starting to attack them both by the bat. And then this is when we realize that apparently this is like, taking a little long. That our boy Jerry didn't realize that the sun's about to come up. So we're thinking like, okay, we got this guy. The sun's about to come up and you're going to be doomed and you're going to be turning into ash. And then, like I said, Jerry turns into a vampire, attacks him a little bit. Part of the sun gets him a little bit. And then Jerry goes all the way down to the basement. Okay. And then Charlie and Peter, they go to the basement to go find him. But then Charlie runs into the vamp Amy. And this is when we see the vamp Amy, she's on the cover of the movie, like her face with the big vampire teeth. She kind of looks like that, oh God, what's that character from Mortal Kombat? She was like the girl in the green, you know what I mean? And she would take off her fucking mask and she had those big ass teeth. Oh, I just can't remember her name right now.
It wasn't. I know what you're talking about.
It wasn't Melena. It wasn't Melena. It was the green one, but like her evil twin. That's what she kind of reminded me of in this movie. Was that I thought she looked really cool with that little super like crazy like teeth, vampire teeth and everything. It looked really cool.
Yeah.
So they start fighting a little bit. So this is the other part I wanted to bring up. So, Allison, have you you've been in some basements before, right?
I have, yes.
So does your basement have like mirrors or windows like all around it
that face the sun.
In your basement.
Yeah, I thought that was a little strange, right? Like the how. Okay, so the point of a basement, right, is that it's under the ground.
Yeah. Maybe
so how is the sun getting in?
And I was thinking, okay, maybe it's just like the level before you get to the basement, but no, like we saw at the beginning that Charlie tried to go into the actual basement. There was like
they took it under the ground.
Yeah, underground.
Yeah, you see them going under the ground with the coffin. Like if it were an attic or something, that would have made perfect sense.
Yeah,
but it's not. It's in the basement. So I don't understand this at all. Like as a writer, like okay, I just talked about how much I love Tom Holland, and I do. But like as a writer, like how can you not see that as a mistake?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I would think that it would be important for for me to have something that logically makes sense, and this doesn't make any sense. But it's still a fantastic scene.
So we get this whole fight scene where Jerry, he's turning into his like bat-like creature, just attacking everybody, but Charlie keeps like throwing shit at the. And okay, so another thing, like in Dance of the Damned, where our boy Vamp would like he would deadbolt like some wood and shit, you know what I mean, on the windows and stuff. Apparently, our boy Jerry is too lazy. He just put some like paint over it or some shit. You know what I mean? Like it was easy to break this glass. You know what I mean? He was just throwing shit. Like it could be anything. He just blows it and it just breaks his glass like super easy. So he's breaking all the glass. And the vamp, it's just only like certain light comes in at the beginning, and the vampire creature is about to basically kill Peter Vincent until Charlie breaks the main glass, and this is when the vampire creature melts. This is when we see the prop that was supposed to be in Ghostbusters melt with it.
Yeah.
So after all this, we see that Amy has turned back to normal. All right, and then we cut back to them both making out in the bedroom again. And then Peter Vincent is back on the air. I guess he got his show back on somehow.
Yeah,
and
I guess he did. Yeah,
he shouts out Charlie on there, and apparently he's doing like not only is he doing vampire films now, he's also doing alien summer camp movies on there now too.
Well, yeah. I mean, he has to do other stuff, right? He can't just do Peter Vincent.
Maybe that's why he got a show back, because he said he agreed to do other horror style films, not just only vampire stuff. And then Charlie looks next door. Amy asks, is there anything wrong? He says nothing. And then we hear the Evil Ed voice laugh to some 80s dance music.
Which implies that we're going to get a sequel, which we do, but I think it has nothing to do with this ending, though. Yes. I think Charlie and Peter Vincent are in it. I believe the sequel, I've never seen it, but I believe the sequel is a comedy.
Yeah, well, this one was supposed to be a comedy, too, in parts of it.
Well, and it is, but it's, I think, well, I don't know, maybe I just take it way more seriously, but this is almost like a serious vampire movie, but it does have some comedic elements, intentionally or not.
But I mean, it did have, I thought the way they did this style, like, comedy was, like, good. Because it wasn't like that, like, we're going to hit you in the face with a bunch of stupid jokes like Saturday the 14th or nothing. But we would have, like, there would be some comedic elements to it. Like, we would have, like, the Peter Vincent character was, like, an homage to, like, the 50s vampire films, but he was, like, very over the top and he was fake and everything. We would have Charlie, being, like, a little goofy throughout the movie. Evil Ed was saying some goofy lines and shit. So, they added some comedy in it, but I thought it actually worked for the film.
Yes. I don't know. It was cool. It was like, it was very 1980s. It was like, this is like a movie that you could show to people, who wanted to know what the 1980s was like. And like, this is a stereotypical 1980s movie.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. I really like this movie. I like this movie a lot. Is it different than you expected it to be, or what did you think about it on your first viewing?
No, like it kind of, so my first viewing, I would say the way when I was, watching it, like it kind of, I can't really put my finger on it. Mm-hmm. It did remind me of exactly like what it sounds like. It's a kid who figured out that he had a vampire living next door and how he would deal with it. Okay, so I like the realism, and they try to make everything kind of like real with it. Yeah, certain parts of it at least. But yeah, I thought it was pretty cool. Like, I thought it was pretty fun. It's kind of like a fun little movie. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like, like a fun little tale. It's not too dark. It's not too light. It's like somewhere like right in the middle. Obviously we didn't see a lot of like, dark, vampire, lore to it. But no, I thought it was I thought it was like
there's some things that are pretty dark though.
Yeah.
Like the scenes where he's like converting Amy, I thought was pretty dark. Where she's like turning into a vampire and she's like sweating on the little floor or whatever, and like all curled up in a fetal position. That was kind of dark. And the blood raining down her back was really kind of dark. But yeah, I liked this movie a lot, and I'm kind of glad that that you enjoyed it at least.
Yeah, it was definitely fun. We'll have to come back maybe a different month to do the sequel. Let's see how that one worked out.
Maybe we can do it in another horror comedy month if we decide to do that ever again.
Or a vampire month, or a
vampire month. That's true. We could always do that. Yeah.
So, but yeah, that kind of rounds out our vampire month. I thought this was a really fun month for the month of November. Like I said, we kind of like explored different sides of the vampire lore. You know what I mean? This has actually been one of my favorite months we've done here on the Retro Blood. I thought it was a really fun look at this like different style like vampire films in the 80s. I thought it's really fun. And we'll probably, I know there's more. There's definitely a lot more vampire films out there in the 80s, so we'll probably have to revisit this month sometime down the road. But speaking of that, Allison, what are we going to be talking about all of next month in March, brother? It's going to be a big month. We got 5 reviews to do, brother.
Yeah, I know. We got 5 shows next month at least. So we're going to do 1980s horror anthologies.
Oh, a story within a story.
The story within a story, brother.
Yeah, that's gonna be pretty fun. Like anthology stuff is pretty wild, and there's like a shit ton of them that happened around here in the 80s too. So that's gonna be pretty fun.
A lot of them, yeah. Which is So there's gonna be some good. There's gonna be some that you've heard of, and some that are pretty obscure. So we'll see.
So what are we gonna be starting off with?
Let's start off hot. Let's start off with the classic from 1982, Creepshow.
Ooh, Creepshow, brother. That's probably like the most famous, I would say. Creepshow.
I would say Creepshow is probably Creepshow and Twilight Zone, the movie, are probably the 2 most famous anthology horror movies from the 80s.
Yeah,
I would say so.
So yeah, that should be fun. Yeah, everybody, check us out. The first Creepshow. Come back here at the beginning of March. But everybody, thanks for joining us here on the Retro Blood. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram, YouTube channel. We got a lot of stuff coming this month. And I hope you all enjoyed Vampire Month. And I say, let's get out of here with some artillery. How about we talk about King Thy Name is Slayer, brother?
Hey, that's what I was going to pick too. That's perfect.
That's a great song.
For this movie.
Exactly. Because, our boy Jerry thought he might be the king. You know what I mean? Going into this suburban town, thinking he can just kill a bunch of prostitutes, do whatever he wants. He can capture this girl named Amy that looked a lot like somebody he knew from back in the day. But no, he got screwed because he did not board up his windows. So everybody, if you're a vampire out there, just don't forget to board up your windows. Come on.